you. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. So thanks. It's nice to see the room is full. So I'm Mark Castleman. I have Lily and I have Shireen and Reed, and I'm going to give them a chance to introduce themselves. And hopefully we're going to give you some insight on the VC mindset, which frankly I would like to know as well, because it obviously shifts. But I think the key is that there's not one mindset for VCs. So hopefully we'll talk through a bunch of things. I'll give you my background. I'm going to let each of them talk about themselves. I was a founder. I actually started out as an architect, like a building architect, and then I became a founder of a computer hardware company, which is very strange. And then decided I would never do hardware again and got into software. And then decided I didn't want to be a founder anymore, and I wanted to invest in other founders. And then I became a VC, and then I became an investor, et cetera. And now I run Intel's accelerator for deep tech startups in the US. The fund, one of the funds that I worked for was Mistletoe. I don't know if anybody's heard of Mistletoe. It's a very large fund run by a guy named Taizo's son. And Taizo's brother is Masayoshi's son that owns SoftBank. So we have this very interesting dynamic of investing in that world. And that was a fund investing in what we called frontier tech, or very kind of long investment cycles, and then fund of funds. So we're investing in other VCs. This is a really interesting world to live in. So in Ignite, we're looking for deep tech startups, founders that are pre-growth, and we bring them into our program and we help them grow. And we use Intel as a backdrop for that. So it's a little different than Intel Capital, but we have a lot of relationships with VCs and our own corporate venture capital program. And so there's a lot going on there. So let me let Lily introduce herself and the others.
Thanks, Mark. Great to be here. I'm Lily Toto. I'm an associate at Two Lanterns Venture Partners, an early stage VC fund based here in Boston. And a bit of background on the fund: we invest in pre-seed through Series A startups, software only, and we're pretty industry agnostic within software. In terms of our fund, we're actively deploying capital right now, and we invest in US and Israeli startups. And prior to joining the team at Two Lanterns, I spent some time in management consulting and also worked at a few different early stage venture-backed startups.
Hi, I'm Shireen Shermack. I'm an entrepreneur and angel, and I actually was the original CEO of Alumni Ventures, which many of you have probably interacted with at some point if you're fundraising. I have started probably about 5 companies, several of which have ended successfully. And I love the idea of taking that capital and moving it back into new startups. That's generally what my focus is. I'm kind of curious from the crowd here today, how many of you are actively fundraising? Okay, great, nice. Fantastic. All right.
How many actively investing? Any investors in the room? Oh, we got a couple. Right. There you go. Okay, everybody that raised your hand the first time, go, talk to those guys. All right, sorry.
Awesome, thank you, Shireen. Can I get a picture of everybody? Because we're always on the other side of it, so smile. We have to take these for our social media, Greg until Ignite. Thank you. I'm NF up here, no funding. No, my name is Reed Frericks, and I work with Intel Ignite. And my background is kind of the unconventional path, right, Mark? I was an actor in Hollywood years ago, and I ended up working in a family office, managing a family office for several years. And so I kind of looked at more of the public markets, and then I was a founder. And so, being a founder is like a little bit like being an actor for a while. It's really just kind of hustling and starting up. And when I had the opportunity to work with Intel Ignite and what Mark was building here, it was just sort of a natural, really cool opportunity to work with founders and also look at it from all the different perspectives, both as an investor and as a founder, and really try to see where we can be the best fit and help grow companies. So yeah, we're happy to answer questions around Intel Ignite as well, because we talk to a lot of VCs. We have about 500 VCs in our network that we speak with. We're not a competitor, so they're always looking for, we're sharing ideas, we're sharing ways that we can help grow startups. So hopefully that can help.
Yeah. So we got a pretty diverse crowd here. One of the things I want to share with you that we do, and one of the reasons why we like this panel, is that from our side, the founders that come into our program, one of the things that we're talking to them almost, 80% of the time is, what do other people think about what you just told them? And so understanding the mindset of somebody else on the other side of the table is super important. We get very nerdy and we talk about encrypting information and decrypting it in a conversation, because everyone has an encryptor and everyone has a decryptor. Remember that? And so what is mindset and understanding that? So without getting too philosophical over it, we want to get into some of the details, but a key takeaway I hope that you all will take away is that there's not necessarily a single framework for how you will achieve funding or tell your message or tell your story so that somebody understands where you're coming from. So we'll talk through a lot of these things as we go forward. So I just have to go to the most basic of all questions, and I think all three of you guys can answer this. And this is kind of like a setup question. Everyone's gonna groan as soon as I say this. What criteria do investors use to evaluate startups? Go.
I'll take a
Terrible
first-
question, right?
I'll take a first stab at this very difficult question and say that it really does vary a bit by stage, but at the earliest stage, and we invest pre-seed and seed, we really like to look deep in depth on the team, the potential market, and then as you get to seed from pre-seed, Series A from seed, traction starts to matter more and more. So your progress among your customers, with your development of your product, bringing in the best talent to your team, that matters more and more the later stage you go. But at the very beginning, we really like to prioritize the team and the potential market size.
Yeah, I mean, I would 100% agree with that. I write a lot of first checks, and at that point in time, there isn't that much to look at. And I've often wondered what VCs who take like 9 months to look at a 2-person company are doing the whole time. So I would say, in the beginning, it's very much around the team, the idea. You can throw in intellectual property or anything like that if it's a deep tech type of company. And then as the company matures, traction can look like I've been through an incubator and been through a selective program, or it can look like I've got some customers, or it can look like I've got a long list of potential beta customers. And as stages go by, then you start to get to, I'm just looking at, what is your balance sheet? What are your projections and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, definitely stage is very important, but team, when we talk about team, people talk a lot about product market fit, but founder market fit. So really trying to clearly distinguish, your unique, it says your uniqueness as a founder and what you bring to the table, I think can't be understated enough. And just coachability. So, while this is, the topic is mindset, we really look for a growth mindset in our founders, people that are coachable, because people that are always learning and always looking to grow are usually have the most success, at least in our program and from talking to VCs. So. Yeah.
And coachability is huge. I think the earlier you are in the cycle, the more it is about you as a person. Okay. And that is kind of dicey, right? Because, does that mean we're making investment decisions based on like people? And in some sense we are, but Reed makes a good point, which is coachability is everything. Because if you walk in the room and you know everything already, what are you doing there? I mean, your problem would have already been solved, right? You would have everything you need because you have all the answers. So I think on the surface, it's really important to realize that we don't have all the answers. We had a company that came through, had a huge funding. I mean, in their first check, their pre-seed check was close to 20 million. Like, what is going on? And so we met this person, and I'll keep it as vague as possible. We met this person, and this person insanely smart. And this person just asked questions practically our entire meeting. And I'm sitting there going, and oh shoot.
He takes notes.
He's
over there.
He's taking notes. He's taking notes. Okay, whatever. Taking notes. And I thought, wow, this person is super smart. I could sit here and just ask this person questions all day about whatever they're doing. And he was never upset when somebody told him something that he should do with his business. Never. And I thought, wow, that is really fascinating. And I asked him, like, how is it that you're never like bothered by any advice or any suggestion or someone telling you doing something wrong? And he said, I just always believe I'm about to learn something interesting regardless. And so mindset is everything. And so when you go into a room and you're an early founder and you're getting everyone telling you 100 different things, the more you're able to sit there and listen to that advice and say, oh, that's interesting, or I'm going to think about that, the more that other person will say to themselves, oh, this person can go the journey, because what they know right now is not what they need to know in the future. It's what they're going to learn. And that's super important early stage. So I just want to throw that in as like a mindset issue, because you're talking to them early. But Shireen mentioned a very important point. It's like, as you go on, metrics start coming into play. What's your growth? What's your year over year? I don't know if you know the rule of 40, but know the rule, look up the rule of 40. It's important. So how you grow against your competitors or against your space is also important, not just you as a person. So it shifts, it does shift, but being a great learner and listener and coachable throughout your experience as a founder is, I think, in my personal opinion, one of the most attractive elements of investing early in a person. I'll share that. Okay. Yeah, you want to follow up to that?
We didn't really talk that much about like the idea or the space.
Yeah.
So VCs will typically like, or, have a particular thesis with respect to different spaces.
Mhm.
And you probably already know this, like fintech versus AI versus, other buzzwords. But most VCs have already kind of mentally hashtagged themselves along those lines. And so it's very important when you walk into that meeting to be very conscious of the fact that, if a VC is positioning themselves as, we're only going to invest in AI in the next 12 months, and you're coming in with drug discovery that has nothing to do with AI, or you've got a consumer product, then you probably haven't really made the best use of anybody's time. So I think from your side of the table, you can actually do a lot before you get to the VC meeting to make sure that that meeting is going to be successful.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect question, because so aligning interests earlier is super important. So what's your recommendation? You said research. What about talking to people, finding other founders, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, well, when I'm raising, I usually look at competitors in our space or near spaces and try to look at who's actively funding companies around us, maybe in things that aren't competitive.
Mhm.
And that will start my list. And I think as a founder, you know what you're doing when you make your list of 20 or 30 investors and then start assessing them along the lines of how close they are to the kind of thing that you're doing. From a VC's perspective, I really like to see the upfront preparation where they know what we're investing in or they know what we're looking for. And it's always like a gold star in the meeting when you walk in and you actually have a sense for the type of things that the VC actually is looking for. In the meeting, I mean, people will often ask VCs, what stage do you invest in, or are you investing in X or Y right now? But if you actually look at their social media, you should be able to make that determination before you come in. So there's a lot you can do it's not about the meeting itself. It's about the 24 hours before the meeting and how much, cyber work that you're willing to throw in to make sure that it goes well.
Yeah, I would just add one quick thing on that, because a lot of VCs we talk to mention that preparation is key, not only just from your side of it, but also being able to ask them questions, because they want to be asked certain questions. And so the more you know in your preparation, then the better you're going to be in asking those specific questions.
Yeah, it's totally fair. Maybe this for Lily, being out there and hearing from founders. What do you think when a founder says, how big is your fund and how much you're investing? What do you think about? Does it bother you, or is it just part of how it works?
I think it definitely can show that they may have not done the background research before talking to you or reaching out. But I like to always start off the calls with giving background on the fund, just to make sure right up front that we can know if it is a fit or not. So at the beginning of every call, we'll give information about what we like to invest in, the stage, the industry, and we'll have looked up the company beforehand to make sure that it does fit within our thesis. So I think from the investor's side too, doing that research as an investor and making sure you're not taking the meeting as a potential investment unless it does fit within your thesis is important as well.
Yeah, a good VC will stay in their lane, usually. Some of them have what they call opportunity investment options on their fund, but a lot of them are governed by the docs of their fund. They are literally not allowed to invest in other categories because their LPs have said, hey, I like health tech or something like that. And so that partner can't actually put money. You could come in with the next best thing and they would love to invest in you, but maybe they won't. So a no might be simply a mindset issue or an investment thesis issue versus like an evaluation of your company as a fundable entity. So that's something to keep in mind. So on that, have you ever passed on a company that you would have loved to done, but you couldn't because your investment thesis told you otherwise?
I mean, I usually invest so early, it's kind of a grab bag, and I'm not just investing in
Yeah.
fintech or investing in, biotech or something like that. So diversification has always been the key in the kinds of portfolios that I'm forming. But there are other reasons like related to that, like a company may come in and they're doing a series A plus or a B plus, and they need a round that's around the size that we might do anyway. And, but a lot of times, coming into the cap table that late, it doesn't really fit the math, which is part of the thesis. So for any investor, there's math involved in what they can and cannot do anyway. So if they come into a deal that's an early stage, like seed stage and A stage, and you come to them with, oh, I'm only raising 5 million because I'm doing a series B plus or an extension of a later round, they might not be able to do it simply because they're looking for particular multiples, for the size of investment that they have. So very early stage investors take on a ton of risk, and so they need a lot of diversification. So they need to write a particular check size at a particular number of checks. And that math has been baked in long before you walked into the room. So, there have been times where I've had to look away from, something that was later stage, even if it was a small check size, because I honestly, I really like doing the first checks. It gives me a good feeling, but I also, the math just doesn't work for me later on.
Let's talk about data for a second. So we just went through a selection process. Reed and I looked at close to 500 companies over about a 90-day period. And where I want to go with this is to recognize that as a founder, you have your one deal, okay? And most of the VCs at an investing fund that you're going to talk to are going to look at close to 1,000 in 1 year. And a typical fund, if it's 100 million with 2 investment partners or 3 investment partners, each of those partners will do 1 or 2 deals per year. Okay? Because that's how the math works, to Shireen's point. So think about that. You're one of 1,000 options for that investor. So they have all this data and they're doing all this pattern matching and all this comparison, and then you show up. So what are the things that the founder can come in and say or do, aside from wearing a shark pajama outfit, to be remembered or to be understood? What do you think? What stands out to you?
So I'd say the first piece of advice there is getting a warm introduction if possible. There's thousands of cold emails, cold LinkedIn messages that end up in a VC's inbox, and those will be hopefully read by the VC, but the ones that come from a trusted friend, a trusted colleague, will be paid a little more attention to, and they may be more likely to take a meeting with you. So going to events, networking, being able to get that warm introduction is really valuable just right out of the gate to get that first call. And then I'd say after that first call, making sure that you're sending a really detailed follow-up email. That's something that not every founder does, or they may just send more of a thank you email, but having new information, additional business updates, a demo, any other information that can kind of catch the investor's interest, keep them engaged with you is really valuable.
Yeah, I think what would definitely be a green flag for me would be coming in with some kind of traction points, talking about how you've got a waiting list or that you've been out there generating a funnel, even if you don't have a product ready, you've got some beta testers waiting and here are their logos. And also showing how you've been through some selective process before. So if you've been at an Intel Ignite or another sort of incubation type program where somebody has had to select you from a crowd, that can definitely perk up the conversation and shows that you're sort of at a different level. And I would also tag on to Lily's point that while not everybody has a great, has a network that can get them into every VC's office, I would say entrepreneurs in residence are everywhere. I was an entrepreneur in residence at Harvard Business School for 4 years. And a lot of people who came into my office hours were really, we would have a great conversation, but at the end, they always had a very particular warm lead that they wanted. So coming into office hours is a way for people who don't already have pre-baked networks to be able to come into Lily's meeting and say, oh yeah, do you know Shireen? Like I went to her office hours, and she can say, yeah, Shireen's great.
Yeah, I would just say, I think we talk a lot about trying to understand your audience, especially when you're communicating your story. So from a VC, thinking of a VC's perspective, kind of what Mark pointed out earlier, but I mean, they see thousands of deals, so their time is limited. So all the more reason when you come in that you have to understand that they don't have a lot of time, or they have a million things going on. So really getting really clear on who you are, so that comes across, but also getting right to that clear customer problem, your clear solution, your differentiation, those kind of key points to leave them so they can walk out of there thinking, oh, I remember that guy. I remember that girl. She had this company. This is who she was. And then following up, I think I can't stress it enough. I mean, there's definitely a cadence to, not being overbearing or not being annoying, but, VCs and we as too we appreciate people that are following up with us. Hey, I just got a new customer. I have a POC, or like Shireen said, I was just in this accelerator. Following up, that shows that your professionalism. It also shows your ambition. Shows the type of founder that maybe they're going to invest in. Maybe not then, but maybe down the road as well, because ultimately they want people that are going to have the will to win.
Yeah. Storytelling is enormous. I mean, think about those 1,000 deals. Okay, so that person heard 1,000 deals, and then one founder walks in and can talk about themselves, why they exist in the universe, what problem they're solving, and how they're solving it, and they do that in 30 seconds. And then another founder comes in and it takes them half an hour. Now, they both could be totally aware of what they're doing, but the appearance of awareness will be very different. The appearance of one being focused, laser focused, very clear about what they're doing will stand out. That's the person that tells that story more quickly, frankly, than the other one. They may have both the same understanding or level of understanding, but we're talking about mindset here. We're not talking about necessarily facts. We're talking about mindset, how something is perceived. And in the case of those 1,000 deals, I'm on the VC side, I'm going to be sitting there kind of right or wrong, kind of ranking who got there sooner, who knows this, what's my perception of how they know it. I've only spent a few minutes with these folks. So clarity is everything when you get in there. And I will shift gears and talk about pitching for a second. And I'll throw my provocative statement out there that when you're pitching, you are not selling your deal. Okay. If you're trying to sell to a VC, they will reject that almost every time. The key is tell them where you're headed. And if you have filtered to the right investor, you already know that they are on a parallel journey to you. They may jump onto your track. And that's the point. You want to tell a story that somebody is already on that journey. And you say, let me tell you the journey I'm on. And they'll go, wow, I was just thinking about this. And as a good founder, you know that. So you're telling them the story they want to hear on the journey that they're already on. And now they go, oh, that is the journey that I've been looking for. Now the only question they're thinking to themselves is this the journey of the comparable journeys that is going to get to the finish? That's a very different decision matrix than, oh, do I want to go with this person? So find the people that want to go. So let's talk about pitching. I want to share this with Reed because he was that Hollywood actor and the producer and a storyteller and had a very interesting company about storytelling. But what is the key to getting in there within the first minute or two when you're telling that story?
Yeah, I mean, storytelling goes back for, it's the beginning of time. I mean, I think the key is look, everybody wants to go on a journey, right? We're all relatable in so many ways. And things that we go through, they want to see challenges that can be overcome. So I think the key is you gotta hook them with something. It doesn't have to be like the most bizarre thing, but there has to be something, whether it's a question or something that they immediately connect with you. Tell a little bit of, maybe it's a personal story, something that connects with them to where they go, hey, I want to see where this goes. And then through that is just layering in as part of that journey and that storytelling, just the right amount of things that will allow them to follow you on that story, but also not getting in the weeds. We see a lot of deep tech from our perspective, a lot of deep tech companies, super smart people, but almost all of them are in the weeds, too much data, too much on their slides, too much everything. And you want to follow them, but you just keep going, gosh, I'm losing, I'm getting lost here, So I think telling that story almost as if you're telling it to somebody that you care about, somebody that might be, 10, 12, 13 years old, that's a good practice to do, because we all want to go on a journey at some point with you.
I wish I could find the guy that 10 years ago was telling everybody you have to demonstrate how passionate you are about your startup and your topic in the meetings. We can see your passion from the other side of the table. We always can. You don't need to demonstrate it by, I don't know, arguing with the VC about where the direction of the company should go. Somebody makes a suggestion to you that you don't agree with, say, oh, that's really interesting. And maybe later on you work in a point that shows why that may or may not be the right way to think about it. But I've definitely had people pick fights in meetings over, a question or a comment. And I'm just kind of like, where do you think this is going to lead to? Because at the end of the meeting, you kind of want to have this favorable, warm impression of a person. And you want to you want to leave the meeting thinking about the idea and saying, these guys are really going to be game changers. I have to invest in these guys. I do not want to miss this deal. But if somebody's going to be a jerk to you the whole time during the process, you think, well, this person's impervious to feedback potentially, or a little aggressive. And maybe that's not going to be so great when they're trying to make partnerships or, do IP discussions with universities or things like that, plays out into other discussions. So anyway, if you find that person, let me know.
I would echo both of those points, but also add in terms of not getting too technical, I like to do the dinner party rule, where if it's something that the VC can then go describe at a dinner party to their friends and family, you've won and you've succeeded. Since often on a call, it won't be the whole team, maybe the partners won't be on the call, whoever's on the call with you will then be going back and explaining your technology to the rest of their team. And through that telephone game, if it's too in the weeds, too convoluted, you won't be able to get your most important points across. So I would make sure that you're having that 30-second soundbite that's easily translated to other maybe not as technical people on the team or in their networks. I think that can go a long way.
100%. Some VCs, when you walk in the room, they're a no looking for a yes, and some VCs are a yes looking for a no. And it's hard to tell the difference between them. I was a founder many times, and I raised a lot of money, and I crash burned a lot of companies, and I have a lot of scar tissue. And I feel like I pitched 1,000 times. I mean, thousands of times actually. And it's just, every time I do it, I'm like, why am I here? Why am I doing this yet again? So finally, I feel like after years and years of doing this, I started thinking about this mindset issue, because just giving out information is just not good enough. You really have to understand how that information is being absorbed. So I spent a lot of time reading decision science and decision making and human brain, all this stuff. And what I learned was that the human brain is like a question answering machine. It is optimized for answering questions. And you think about it, right? That's why people use the word right all the time. Activates the brain. So it's very hard for the brain to hear a question and not try to answer it. So there are these embedded questions, and I'll get to my point, which is when you're pitching and your investor, that audience is sitting there listening to them. My advice to you in your pitch, whatever, this is a mindset issue, by the way. Find one thing that you are absolutely certain that person doesn't know. Just one. And when you tell them, they will hear it and they will say, I've never heard that in my entire life. And so what's the next question they will be asking themselves? See, I just asked you a question. So what's the next question they'll ask is, what else does this person know that they have not told me yet? And that will keep them wondering about you and get you thinking about it. Because to Lily's point, when they walk out of the room, there's what they just heard, and then there's what they want to tell other people that they just heard. And these are different. So if you tell them something that they didn't hear, the likelihood that somebody else didn't hear it is in their office is probably pretty high. So now what are they going to want to do? Go tell the thing that you told them to someone else. And that is going to propagate you as a person that brings new learning to them. All the VCs I ever met were like massive consuming or learners. So this is a mindset game that you're playing in some sense, and game maybe is not the right word, but I think understanding human behavior and decision making and what story you're telling them, it is not selling, okay? It's not selling. You're not there to try and convince someone that you are awesome. You're trying to tell them where you're headed so that they can decide for themselves whether they want to go with you or not. It's a bit of an inversion, okay? So anybody can do this. Anybody can do this. It's just thinking about it. So I'll go back to my trusty question list. Oh shoot, that was my answer to my next question. Okay, so I'll pass it to you guys. I gave you my version of this answer, which is how can founders make their startup stand out? So see, I inverted it. That's all. So go ahead. Give us your version of that.
Sure. I mean, I was actually going to color a little bit on what Mark just said. So that fact that you walk in with is usually, if it fits well, a good first slide. And it can sound like something like, did you know that 1/3 of carbon emissions in the US are driven by animals raised for pet food? I don't know that that's exactly the right number, but somebody told me what that number was, and it was like double-digit percentages. And I think I told 50 people after that, did you know? This is crazy. Like, why aren't we all using, and so that's what that looks like. You go around, you say it at cocktail parties, you say it at dinner, you feel smarter. And that's the whole, perception game is when I walk out of that meeting, do I feel like I know something new? Do I feel smarter than I was when I walked in? Do you have a new piece of information for me about a market? And then, it's always kind of about leaving the person on the other end of the table feeling like they had a good time, like they're smarter, like, if you can, all those characteristics you want them to believe about yourself, it's like to Mark's psychology perspective, you actually want the VC to have to think that about themselves when they're walking out of the room. I think in terms of very concrete things that you can differentiate yourself by when you're in the room, a lot of times it's person market fit. If the founder has some very particular corner of knowledge on the market, that's always fantastic. If they've been able to already raise grant money, or if they have certain types of investors, that's always a nice green flag. If they really understand their market well enough that you almost can't ask them a question that they can't get to, another green flag. If they've been able to take their company from zero to something on very little capital, that's actually a really good green flag and a really good point for the current capital markets because it's pretty tight out there. But if you're able to make progress on whatever you've got and, on duct tape and spit, that's always a really good sign to investors that you're able to make progress and you're cost conscious. And so if I do write you a check in this very constrained market, you're going to do good things with that money.
Yeah. God, there's so much good stuff there. I mean, there's so many things, but I'll just come back to, I think, kind of what they all said in a very short version, which is, you really just got to be yourself and really, get that across and be, authentic in this meeting because the more authentic you are and the more you can really focus on that customer problem or that problem that you're solving, I think is so clear because so many people try to add all these things. Well, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And they just throw so much at them that I think, again, you're making it about yourself and not about the audience and what you're trying to solve. So you make it very clear, make it very simple in some respects, but also just trust in yourself. Everybody's at a different path on their journey. So trying to inflate numbers or try to inflate, I'm further along. It's not worth it. You're better off telling, I just got this win yesterday and it was, a partnership I signed with, a university or something like that. Just being very, very honest and clear with where you're going.
I would echo that and add on as well that it's important to make it a bit interactive with the VC so that it's not just going slide after slide, hurtling through your slides, it's important to pause, check for questions. If you're able to either share a live demo for a software product or send them a login so they can play around with your software. Of course, not as applicable for maybe a medtech device, but if you're able to let them play around with it, that's really helpful. And just making sure that you're engaging them throughout the process. And something that I like that founders do is at the beginning of the call, or the in-person meeting, checking if the VC prefers for them to walk through the PowerPoint or if they would prefer to just have it as a conversation. And a lot of times the investor might say they prefer to just have a conversation, especially if they've spent a lot of time reviewing your deck already. It might be a better use of time to have that as a more organic conversation between the two of you versus going through each slide and potentially repeating information that they already learned.
Yeah, that's perfect. I was living in Silicon Valley, and we were getting to a point where investors didn't even want to see slides because they were just like, oh my God, there's so many slide doctors out there that will slide doctor and tell you, put these things in this 10 orders to, 10 million, I don't know, whatever. And so finally it's like, I don't want to see any slides. I want you to tell me. And if you can create a word picture that tells me and turn it into a story, now I'm going to be interested to hear the next thing. And Reed and I were talking about this on the way over. You're hard pressed to find any VC that will invest just from your slide deck. So this is why when you send the LinkedIn and like, here's my slides and I'm taking capital, would you be interested? It's almost always a no. I mean, if it's ever a yes, I would like to hear that because I've actually never encountered a yes. I'm just open to the possibility there's a yes in the universe on that, but I've never encountered it. Why? Because they're not investing in your slides. They're investing in you and your story and all that. Now, the slides are a representation of how you structure your thinking. That's it. They don't tell the story for you. They're the facilitator of you telling that story. So it's always going to come back to you anyway. And I've invested in people that have had terrible slides that just knew it. They just gave a terrible presentation. I'm like, you're a better presenter, you're a better founder than the slides that you just gave. So let's talk further. But I've also passed on companies that had brilliant slides and super smooth. And then I would start to ask questions and they would say things to me like, Reed was on one of these calls. Hey, Mark, if you're not interested, you don't have to invest. We have so many people that are interested.
Ooh.
And I was like, whoa, here's a person that doesn't want to engage in a conversation. You see how that can just shut things down very quickly. So let's talk about rejection for a second. We've all been there. We've all been rejected. All right, now we can move on and we can get over. This is now a self-help group. We're all helping each other. All right. So you get a no. I'm a founder. I get a no. Now, what is the question that I could ask versus arguing back? Okay, let's take arguing back off the table. I want to learn now. I want to learn. I got to know. You got to accept it. I'm going to learning moment. Now, what do I ask my audience at the moment where I realize this is a no? But I can't just go like, okay, thanks, got to go. What should I do?
So I can hop in there, and everyone in this room, I'm assuming more early stage founders. So something that you might hear a lot is you're too early for us. And a really useful question to ask the VC is what milestones they like to see. And they might not have quantitative numbers, especially at the early stage, but they likely will give some insight into what they do like to see. Since sometimes a no is a no forever, but sometimes a no is a just not yet. And making sure you have that noted down. So then if you do meet those milestones, maybe 6 months from now, 9 months from now, you can have them in your book to reach back out to when you meet it and when it might be a fit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a really great answer and covers 99% of situations. And I think the key thing is to understand when markets are tight or a VC is not really, or maybe recently made an investment in your space and isn't really looking right now, that most of the time no's are very much have nothing to do with you or not personal. So don't take it personally because they're saying no to more companies by far than they're saying yes to every single week. And the important thing for you is to have that list and just be working the list like it's a business development exercise in some ways, because it can be games, a numbers game. And just going through a longer list of folks who are in your space, you're more likely to work your way down to a match. And keep in mind that it is a funnel. So you may start off talking to 20, but at the end, you may be talking to a very passionate 3, which is always a good position to be in. And that's the kind of set of conversations you're going to create. But if you started out with 20 and you're down to 3, that means 17 people are going to say no. And you cannot take that as a personal thing, because there are about 100 reasons that we just talked about that have like very little to do with you as an entrepreneur.
Great point. Took me a long time to learn that as an actor, because there's a lot of no's. I would just say that it goes back to the mindset and having that growth mindset and really understanding that you're try to learn from the no's. The no's are part of the business. Everybody gets no's. I mean, the most successful companies have had multiple no's, tons of no's. But what are you learning from that? So what questions can you ask around that? We deal with this a lot in our selection day, and a lot of the companies that want to come through our program. And I always appreciate the ones that are very gracious and say thank you for the opportunity, but they want to learn like what were some of the comments? What can I learn from this? And as you'll find, a lot of them, there is usually kind of like a common theme to those comments. And so learning from that, and then also just recognizing, we're all our worst enemies with the thoughts we create in our head. Like, sometimes it is just the market's tough, or you are too early, or there's a lot of things that are out of your control. But the more you can kind of, again, have that growth mindset, continue to learn, continue to ask the right questions. Can't say that enough.
Yeah, sometimes, well, there's a lot of conversation around being tough, being resilient, and having grit, and doing all these things. And don't worry about the no's, keep going forward, except when the no's are correct. So sometimes there are things that you are doing in your business that are actually blocking your ability to succeed. So be careful of buying into sort of the grit side of the equation without looking at the fundamentals of what those comments are. Okay, I really encourage that. On the other hand, you don't want to lose your grittiness and your resilience. And I was talking to another panel, and I said, there is no human that will get to the top of Mount Everest naked, even if they had all the grit of every human that ever existed in the history of the world. They will literally not get there. Why? You need a team, you need equipment, you need practice, you need health, you need food, you need all of these other things. So there could be something that someone's telling you in the know that is actually what you need. Okay, so just pay attention to that reality. Again, it's like I heard another VC, I won't mention who it was, made a very great comment where the founder, he said, I had a founder ask me, hey, if you were pitching my company, what would you like to have said that would have gotten you to say yes? I was like, whoa, hold on a second. Let me diagram that for a second, figure out how that worked. And now it's like, wow, that's brilliant. You just heard my pitch. You're pitching me. What would you want to say that you would believe would get the other person to say yes? Oh my gosh, they will pitch themselves in that moment. And it's brilliant because they will tell you exactly everything that they would want to say, which is everything they would want to hear. Now, then it's usually like a giant task list. You have to go achieve all these things. But okay, so pause there for a second. I will say, like, whether it's a question here or a question, I think we can do questions. We have a mic or so. Okay, we got a question right here.
I'll come right there.
Thank you. So the market is obviously pretty tough in tech, but the story I'm telling myself is that there is a window that if you are solving a really hard problem using Gen AI, there is a massive hype cycle and there is money flowing to those companies. Could you guys, or you all, give me your perspective on how maybe, I don't know if leniency or what is your view on if a company's coming to you maybe with a little bit less traction because they are focused on solving a really hard problem using all of the technology that's now available, how that factors into your thinking? And this is more of like early stage, I'd say in the 0 to 1 journey, 0.33.
Very, very good data point. Thank you for that. No, I'm calculating that on my decision line, and I'm like, okay, I'm a third up to 1, and now I'm like, what ratio of that is towards the success? Yeah, it's good. I like it. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just listening to you. And,
Oh.
So I think there are investors that are very much set up for deep tech, which is when people say deep tech, they generally mean a lot of things, but often it means things that will take a long time to get to maturity, that require a leap of faith for a long period of time. So there are a lot of investors, if you look for deep tech, sometimes that's what they mean. The other thing I would say, just hearing your question, is, I've been through some pitch competitions lately and some other, the funnel inbound to my angel group and that kind of thing. And a lot of people are sort of contorting their business plans to wrap them around AI, and worse yet, generative AI, if it has absolutely nothing to do with the success of the product. So, obviously that's easy to spot. I don't think anybody's really fooled by that. That said, if there's an aspect of what you're doing that falls under the conventional definition of AI, definitely include that right now.
Yeah, no, I would just say we saw a lot of companies coming through our deal flow around AI, and I think it was just pretty clear, again, kind of to Shireen's point, again, if you're back to the customer problem, if you're solving something that's really technologically interesting, or really, you have a really cool differentiated solution around AI, that's different. But there's a lot of companies now trying to just put AI in their business name and try to, capture that flow of the market. And that typically doesn't work, as with most hype cycles. Just because something's popular doesn't mean you're going to get funding just because you can jump into that. So it really comes again back to that clear customer problem, that clear solution, what you're doing. So, I mean, what would your thoughts be around some of the stuff we saw?
That's not what I'm asking. If you assume that it's something customers are asking for, that could only be solved by Gen AI. So it's not BS.
Okay.
What I'm asking is, like, as you think about, there are companies that are doing that, those things are going to take longer. Therefore, they're generally going to have certainly less paid customer traction. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to get a sense from you as to, does that sort of give the founders a little bit of an ability to raise money at a reasonable valuation if they're executing a strategy like that would hold water through your diligence process? I get that,
Sure.
like, there's...
No, I would think so, especially you said the valuation. I think the one thing we're hearing in the AI space especially is some of the valuations are just so inflated right now because of it. What would you say?
I would, well, I'm hearing everything you tell me is super vague. So I'll give you a mindset response to that. I am actually trying to fill in everything that you're telling me right now. Okay. And I have a huge number of questions, and I don't buy into the same assumptions that you have. So I would say that I think you're talking about a product market fit question, not is the technology mature enough to solve the problem that you're trying to solve? Because on our side, we have seen a huge number of Gen AI, like deep in the weeds. And is it using Gen AI, or is it infrastructure for Gen AI? Is it compute? Is it silicon? Is it network? What is it? Like, what's layer of the stack is it in? And so I'm going to probably tell you, I'd be willing to bet you I've seen 100 in each layer. Okay. So the question is, how far along are you in that application to demonstrate a proof point in the market that the market will give you value for what you've just brought them? And that's what I would look into for you. And I would say, ignore the funding environment. It's immaterial. When founders solve a problem that is a known problem or a discoverable problem in the marketplace, they generally get funding. Mm-hmm. The question is whether other people think you have solved that problem versus whether you think you have solved that problem. And that's what we're talking about here. Do other people think you have solved that problem? If they do, they will give you funding. If they don't, they will not give you funding. And this is a hard thing to grasp. So this is why storytelling and being able to transfer what you know to other people is super, super important. Now you'd be saying, Mark, you don't understand. There's all this other stuff going on. That's fine. I'm being a little bit lofty here in the moment, but I would say ignore what the marketplace tells you is available to you. When you solve a problem that is a known problem that you can quantify, the market will reward you somehow. People will want to join your team. Customers will want to take on your solution. Investors will want to give you money. People want to listen to your story. They will have signals to all of those things, and they will tell you. They will tell you all that stuff. So happy to talk about it more. And you haven't told me anything about what you're working on, so I'm just extrapolating into like a mindset issue. So this is not a judgment about what you're up to at all, because I know nothing about it. But that would be something to think about. But when it comes to funding, Lily is writing checks. So what do you think about that?
So I'd like to say, in response to your question about not having revenue yet, being pre-revenue, even if you are pre-revenue, showing that you have traction in other ways is really important. So showing that, demonstrating there's a willingness to pay, even if people aren't paying yet, whether it's through unpaid pilots, partnerships, a lengthy wait list of people who are interested in piloting it once the tech is fully built out. So demonstrating interest from potential customers. And then in terms of the technology itself too, depending on the stage of build out that you're at, making sure you have a very clear product roadmap ahead of you. If you're able to, and again, I'm not sure which layer of it it's at for you specifically, but having that very clearly built out. And then for the team to making sure that you have a really key tech leader on the team, whether that's yourself, a CTO and co-founder, an engineering lead, but making sure that there's traction expressed through the product roadmap, through the team, through customers, even if there isn't any revenue yet.
Yeah, I think we have like 2 minutes left, so maybe one question.
Would you take one question
Yeah.
real quick then?
Like, take
Because
one.
we
I
have
think
like
we had a guy,
2 minutes. Okay.
So we had 2 minutes.
I have somebody
And
here.
we can chat with you guys afterwards as well.
Hey guys, so I run a community of founders, about 1,000 of them, and I make referrals to investors every single day.
Perfect.
One of the key things that I find that's really interesting is the first conversation that you guys take is always the same conversation. How boring is that?
Wait, the first wait, say that again?
The first conversation you have with founders is always introductory. What are you doing in terms of your business?
Yeah.
Who are you as a person? Do you have dogs?
Well, this is why in San Francisco, one of the best clubs you can join is a kite surfing club. Not kidding. VCs are all over kite surfing. I don't know why, but they are. If you want to get funded, join a kite surfing club in San Francisco. I am actually telling you that's where they are. And so they don't ask you anything about your they ask you if you know how to kite surf, and then you get to know them as a kite surfer, and then they say, hey, what are you doing? And then they all invest in you.
So one of the
Problem
things,
solved.
yeah. So one of the things that I did is I started to actually take the founders' feedback in terms of these investor conversations and then roll that or leverage it for future founders that are having the same conversation with you.
Perfect. We should get together and talk about how the conversation, that first conversation, should change, because there is a sort of like a I don't know. It's sort of like walking into McDonald's. You stand in line, you order, and you do the same thing. You know, maybe we should change it up. Totally agree.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
What club do we have to join for Boston VCs though? Not the kite surfing. I
We don't
assume.
have kite surfing around here.
No, right?
Gosh,
What?
I don't know if anyone has any suggestions on that. I'm not kidding. Like, kite surfing is a thing.
Rowing. Rowing was the suggestion.
Yeah, you could go to rowing, but I was a rower and it's very painful and I wouldn't recommend it. And by the way, rowing is the only sport that they don't have cuts because everyone quits. So don't do rowing. I love it, but don't do it. So thank you guys for your time and attention. I appreciate it.
Thank you.